Look around you right now. What do you see? Maybe stacks of books you've been meaning to read, clothes piled up waiting to be sorted, boxes whose contents you can't even remember anymore. Do you feel like this is just laziness, irresponsibility, a lack of willpower? But what if I told you that your mess, your clutter, is not actually your fault? What if all this chaos surrounding you is a silent scream for help, a physical manifestation of a deep emotional wound? In today's video, we're going to discuss a shocking yet incredibly vital connection: how chronic clutter becomes one of the primary symptoms of narcissistic abuse trauma. We'll break down why it's so hard for you to let go of things, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you will look at your home with completely different eyes. And perhaps this knowledge will be your first step toward healing. Have you ever wondered why the phrase "just start cleaning" doesn't bring you a rush of motivation, but immediate panic? Let's figure this out together. Before we dive deeper into this topic, let's quickly define our terms. What exactly is narcissistic abuse? It's far more than just a fight or a bad relationship. It is systematic psychological violence designed to crush your will, destroy your self-esteem, and establish total control. The narcissist feeds on your emotions. They force you to doubt your own sanity, your memory, and your feelings. This process is called gaslighting. As a result of months or even years of this kind of exposure, a person develops what psychologists call complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD. Unlike standard PTSD, which stems from a single shocking event, CPTSD is the result of prolonged, ongoing traumatization. And this is where the root of the problem lies. Trauma actually changes the way your brain functions. It affects your ability to make decisions, your energy levels, and your overall sense of safety. And your home, which should be your fortress, becomes a mirror of this internal chaos. It turns into a battlefield where you are constantly losing the war against the abuser's voice in your own head. Let's begin at the absolute core, the primary, and arguably the most critical, reason why a victim of narcissistic abuse finds their home overwhelmed with clutter is the total destruction of their self-esteem and the profound loss of self-worth. Picture this. For years, you've been indoctrinated into believing you are utterly worthless, that your tastes are tacky, your opinions are foolish, and your needs are nothing but selfishness. The narcissist systematically, day by day, wiped away your identity as if using an eraser. They criticized your choice of clothes, your manner of cooking, your friends, and your hobbies. Eventually, you stop understanding who you truly are. Now transfer this feeling to your house. How can you create a space that reflects you if you don't even know who that you is anymore? How can you decide what to keep and what to throw away if you don't trust your own judgment? The resulting clutter becomes the physical manifestation of this deep internal emptiness. The home fills up with objects because inside there is a vacuum, a void meticulously created by the abuser. Every item, even if old and useless, seems more valuable than you are. You cannot bring yourself to throw out an old t-shirt because you subconsciously believe that even it has a greater right to existence than your own needs for cleanliness and order. This entire process happens unconsciously. When you attempt to discard something, you feel paralyzed. This is indecision born out of the fear of making yet another wrong choice and triggering that internal critical voice, a voice that speaks exactly like your tormentor. Therefore, the disarray isn't just scattered objects, it is a monument to your lost self-worth. And to truly begin clearing that physical clutter, you must first start gathering the pieces of yourself. The second profound reason is the sheer exhaustion stemming from the need to constantly make decisions. Psychologists call this decision fatigue. Think back to your life with the narcissist. Every single step, every word, every action was subject to intense scrutiny and criticism. You asked yourself, what should I wear today? Will he approve? What should I make for dinner? Will he tell me it's disgusting garbage again? Should I call my friend? Will that lead to a fight because I'm wasting time on such nonsense? Your entire life became a minefield where every single choice could potentially trigger an explosion. To survive, your mind adapted. You learned either to stop making decisions altogether, deferring completely to the abuser's will, or to hyper-analyze every move, planning 10 steps ahead, which required immense cognitive effort. And now you are finally out of that relationship. You should feel free, right? But your brain hasn't caught up yet. It's programmed itself to believe that decision-making is both dangerous and highly draining. So now, when you stand in front of a closet you need to clean out, your brain screams, "Stop!" For the average person, asking, "Should I keep this sweater or toss it?" is a quick, momentary task. For you, it's a major trigger. It instantly activates the exact same neural pathways that were firing during the abuse. Keep it. But what if I need it later? What if I regret throwing it out, throw it away? What if it was something valuable and I'm just ruining things like always? This draining internal dialogue is completely exhausting. So the psyche chooses the path of least resistance, to not choose at all, put it off, shove it away, just close the closet door and pretend the problem doesn't exist. That's why clutter grows exponentially like a snowball. This isn't laziness. This is learned helplessness, a decision-making system that was fundamentally broken by years of psychological abuse. Every item in your home is a delayed decision that your mind is simply too overwhelmed to process. Let's pivot now to discuss the emotional attachment we form with objects. In a healthy environment, things generally serve a practical, utilitarian, or aesthetic purpose. But for a survivor of narcissistic abuse, these items often become surrogates for the deep emotional needs that were unmet. In a relationship with a narcissist, there was no unconditional love, support, warmth, or security. Any so-called love was strictly rationed and entirely conditional. It had to be earned, constantly bargained for, begged for, and could be revoked at any instant. In this vast emotional vacuum, the psyche begins to latch onto something material, something tangible. That old teddy bear given to you in childhood isn't just a toy. It becomes a symbol of the unconditional love you desperately lacked. A collection of porcelain figurines isn't just clutter. They are tiny witnesses to your life, things that were there before him and offered silent, unwavering support. The books you bought but never read symbolize the hope for a different, smart, interesting life you promised yourself you would one day start. You can't throw them away because that feels akin to murdering that hope. These items become your anchors in a world where human connections proved unreliable and dangerous. They won't betray you, they won't judge you, and they won't leave you. They simply are. This is why the process of decluttering is not perceived as mere cleaning. It feels like an act of betrayal. Throwing out that old mug you drank tea from during your darkest nights is like erasing the evidence that you survived. It is the rejection of the only silent witnesses to your pain. And until you learn to find safety and love within yourself, until you build new, healthy human connections, these things will continue to function as emotional crutches, crutches that, in your mind, you simply cannot walk without. The fourth powerful factor driving this is the paralyzing fear of making a mistake. The narcissist is a master at instilling a feeling of total incompetence in their victim. Every mistake you made, no matter how insignificant, was blown up into a catastrophic disaster. Spill coffee? You always mess things up, you're completely clumsy. Forget to buy bread, you are utterly useless, I can't rely on you for anything. Over time, you started believing this narrative. You developed a paralyzing fear of error because, in your mind, making a mistake is synonymous with humiliation, punishment, and ultimate rejection. This fear permeates every area of your life, but it manifests most strongly when you are forced to make decisions about things. You hold an old, broken hairdryer in your hands. Logically, the thought is simple. Throw it away, it's broken. But the traumatized part of your brain immediately starts to panic. What if I could have fixed it? What if there's a valuable part inside? What if tomorrow I desperately need this exact model of hairdryer for some DIY project, and I'll have already thrown it out? I'll make the wrong choice again. I'll mess up again. To avoid this potential error and the subsequent wave of self-recrimination, you choose inaction. You put the hairdryer back. The same logic applies to clothes that no longer fit. What if I lose weight? To expired makeup. What if they stopped making this exact shade and I absolutely need it later? To mountains of old magazines. What if there was a vital article I missed? You prefer living in chaos, retaining the illusion that you haven't committed the irreparable error of discarding something necessary. Your home transforms into a warehouse of potential opportunities and hedged risks. You cling to every single item just in case, because that potential just-in-case scenario feels infinitely more terrifying in your mind than the daily reality of living in clutter. Getting rid of clutter means making hundreds, even thousands of tiny choices, each carrying the risk of making an error. And your psyche, trained and conditioned by the abuser, simply cannot bear that immense pressure. The fifth aspect, which ties directly into what we just discussed, is procrastination understood as a learned stress response. In trauma psychology, there are three main threat responses: fight, flight, or freeze. In situations of prolonged abuse, where neither fighting nor fleeing is an option, the psyche often selects the third strategy, freezing. You emotionally freeze to minimize the pain you feel. You physically freeze to avoid provoking the aggressor. This becomes your primary survival mechanism. Even after the relationship ends, this mechanism doesn't disappear. It simply transfers to other stressful situations. And for someone dealing with trauma, a task like clearing the clutter in the room becomes an immense stressor. This isn't just cleaning, it's a confrontation with your past, with delayed decisions, repressed fears, and unresolved pain. When you look at that pile of items, your brain perceives it as a threat. And out of habit, it triggers the freeze response. Physically, this manifests as sudden apathy, overwhelming fatigue, and the desire to just lie down and stare at the ceiling. You might wake up determined, make a solid plan, but the moment you open that closet door, you feel like you've been covered by a lead blanket. You have no energy. Everything is too much effort. Your mind goes foggy. This is the classic freeze response in action. Your body and mind sabotage your own intentions because, for them, this task is associated with unbearable psychological tension. This is the same procrastination that prevented you from applying for a new job or starting a new relationship. It's a defense mechanism that once helped you survive, but now prevents you from truly living. Outsiders label this as laziness, but it is not laziness. Laziness is having the energy but choosing not to spend it. In your case, you simply don't have the energy at all. All your energy is consumed by internal struggle and the suppression of traumatic memories that are activated simply by the sight of disorder. Let's switch gears now and discuss something that might sound completely bizarre, but is actually a brutal reality for countless survivors. The sixth reason is the subconscious urge to recreate chaos because it feels familiar, even safe. Yes, you heard that right. Life with a narcissist is defined by constant chaos, the emotional roller coaster, unpredictable rage, non-stop drama, scheming, and manipulation. Your brain and your nervous system spent years adapting to this high-alert, fight or flight state. Calmness and order, to you, are unknown and actually quite anxiety-inducing. When a lull finally hits your life, your brain, which is conditioned to expect a perpetual storm, starts panicking. That silence feels ominous. It expects the other shoe to drop. To cope with this profound anxiety of the unknown, your mind subconsciously strives to recreate the familiar environment, chaos. And the simplest way to do that is by creating physical chaos around you. The clutter in your home becomes a reflection and an extension of the internal disorder you have become so accustomed to. It provides a familiar, albeit unpleasant, feeling. You know how to survive in chaos. You do not know how to live in order and harmony. Order requires maintenance, it requires responsibility, and it requires the belief that you are worthy of a beautiful, comfortable space. Chaos demands nothing. It simply exists. Furthermore, physical clutter can serve as a constant distraction. As long as you are stressing over scattered items and beating yourself up over dirty dishes, you don't have the time or energy to look inward and face the real pain, the deep consequences of the trauma. The mess becomes a convenient scapegoat. It is easier to tell yourself, "I'm depressed because my house is a disaster," than to admit, "My house is a disaster because I am in deep depression following everything that was done to me." This is the psyche's attempt to substitute a huge, uncontrollable problem for a smaller, seemingly solvable one. The seventh reason, which seems obvious yet has deep roots in trauma, is the chronic lack of energy. Narcissistic abuse is a survival marathon that completely depletes every resource you have, emotional, mental, and naturally physical. The constant stress of walking on eggshells and trying to anticipate the abuser's mood literally scorches your nervous system. Your stress hormone, cortisol, is constantly through the roof. This leads to severe sleep disturbances, digestive issues, a weakened immune system, and eventually a state that feels exactly like chronic fatigue syndrome or severe burnout. Once you escape these relationships, your body and mind don't just bounce back at the snap of a finger. They are in a state of profound exhaustion. Imagine your internal battery, which should be at 100%, is barely showing 10, maybe even 5. And you have to ration that minimal energy for the most basic tasks: getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, making food, going to work. There's simply no strength left for anything extra, like deep cleaning. The simple task of sorting out a closet feels as overwhelming as climbing Mount Everest. Any additional effort triggers not just unwillingness, but actual physical resistance from your body. This isn't laziness, it is a real, measurable physiological state. Your body is screaming for rest, recovery, and peace, but you, listening to that abuser's voice ingrained in your subconscious, continue to beat yourself up. Pull yourself together. Everyone else manages. You're just lazy. This internal conflict consumes the very last scraps of your energy, trapping you in a vicious cycle. No energy for cleaning. Mess piles up. Guilt and shame intensify. This drains even more energy. There is only one way to break free from this cycle. Acknowledge your exhaustion, stop demanding the impossible from yourself, and grant yourself the right to rest. The right to simply lie there and recover, even if there are mountains of dirty dishes surrounding you. Let's move on to item number 8 on our list, the trap of the abuser's gifts. Almost every victim of a narcissist has items they were given stored somewhere in their home. And these aren't just trinkets. They can be expensive and meaningful objects, jewelry, electronics, clothing, or home furnishings. Narcissists often employ the tactic of love bombing, especially early in the relationship, showering the victim with lavish gifts. These gifts served as a tool of manipulation, a way to create the illusion of love and care to hook you in. Now the relationship is over, but the objects remain. And you simply cannot deal with them using ordinary logic. When you pick up that ring or that dress, a storm starts brewing in your mind. On one hand, the item reminds you of the pain, the humiliation, and the lies. It is literally saturated with toxic energy. On the other hand, the mechanism the abuser spent so long building kicks in. Memories surface of the good moments, which were always just a facade. You think, but he tried so hard when he picked this out. It cost a fortune. How can I just throw it away? Maybe it wasn't all bad. These items become tangible proof that the good times did exist. To throw them out means finally admitting that all that time was wasted, that all the love was a sham. This realization is simply too painful. Furthermore, the narcissist often instills a massive sense of obligation in the victim. I did so much for you, and now you're being ungrateful. That voice continues to echo in your head. Throwing away the gift feels like an act of ingratitude, a betrayal. So you keep these things. They sit in jewelry boxes, hang in closets, or stand on shelves like small, poisonous idols, contaminating your space and preventing you from moving forward. Every glance at them is a fresh jab at an old wound. Getting rid of these items is not just about cleaning up. It is a powerful, symbolic act of liberation. It is a declaration. I am no longer buying your lies. My peace of mind is worth more than any money and any memory. Reason number 9 is using clutter or junk as a literal physical barrier. When you lived with the narcissist, your personal boundaries were constantly violated. They might take your belongings without asking, read your private messages, walk into your room without knocking, and control your every move. You never had a safe space that was truly yours. Even after leaving the relationship, this fear of intrusion remains. You become afraid of new people, terrified that they will hurt you again, that they will violate your boundaries all over again, and the mess in your home becomes your unconscious ally. It functions like a fortress wall. First, it prevents you from inviting guests over. You feel shame, you fear judgment, and so you isolate yourself. It hurts, but at the same time it feels safe. If no one comes in, no one can hurt you. Your house transforms into your shell, and the clutter acts as its thick, protective walls. Second, even if someone does manage to get into your house, the disorganization creates both physical and emotional distance. Piles of items on chairs prevent them from sitting close to you. A cluttered table doesn't exactly invite deep, meaningful conversation. The chaos generates a tense atmosphere, making it hard to relax and impossible to be vulnerable. It's a way of keeping people at arm's length, preventing them from getting too close to your life and your inner world. Sometimes this behavior extends to the person's own bed. They leave so many things on it that only a tiny sliver remains for sleeping. This is an unconscious defense against potential intimacy, a guardrail against new relationships that feel far too dangerous. The home, which ought to be a place of comfort and hospitality, is instead transformed into an impenetrable fortress, guarded by an army of old magazines, boxes, and unnecessary clothes. And to tear down these walls, you first need to feel safe without them. You must believe that you are capable of establishing and protecting your personal boundaries through words and actions, rather than relying on physical barricades. The 10th item on our list, or the 10th point of our analysis, is self-sabotage, fueled by an imposed sense of worthlessness. A narcissist will never miss an opportunity to convince you that you don't deserve anything good. They will criticize your successes, diminish your achievements, and take pleasure in your failures. Who would ever want you besides me? You're a failure. You'll never succeed. Just look at yourself. You're pathetic. Over time, this toxic mantra morphs into your own internal voice. You genuinely begin to believe that you are undeserving of happiness, success, comfort, or beauty. This belief system manifests clearly in your attitude toward your home. Subconsciously, you feel you are not worthy of living in a clean, beautiful, or harmonious space. Cleanliness and order are associated with well-being, a life that is working out. But if you are a failure, then you must live in an environment that reflects that status. A cluttered, uncomfortable home becomes the physical proof of your worthlessness. This functions as a self-fulfilling prophecy. You believe you are undeserving, so you create a surrounding environment that validates this belief. Any attempt to tidy up is immediately sabotaged. You might buy beautiful storage containers but never find the energy to use them. You might start cleaning only to abandon the task halfway through because that internal voice whispers, "Why bother? Everything will just return to chaos soon anyway. You aren't capable of maintaining order." This is a form of self-punishment. You punish yourself for allowing the abuse or for not leaving sooner. You are continuing the abuser's work, but now you are both the victim and the executioner. Living in disorder is a way of keeping yourself exactly at the low level the narcissist dragged you down to. To truly begin cleaning your home, you first have to grant yourself permission to be happy. You must challenge that inner critic and declare, "I deserve to live in a clean space. I deserve beauty and comfort. I deserve a good life." The 11th reason, and this one flows directly out of a toxic relationship, is the total loss of your self-identity. The narcissist craves total control, and to achieve it, they systematically dismantle their partner's personality. Your hobbies are declared stupid, your favorite movies are primitive, and your music is simply abhorrent. Gradually, you give up everything you once loved just to please them, just to keep the peace. You start wearing clothes they like, socializing only with friends they approve of, and feigning interest in their passions. You cease being an independent person and instead become a pale reflection of your tormentor. And now you're finally free. But who are you? What do you want? What do you even like anymore? You find yourself completely unable to answer these fundamental questions. This confusion has a direct impact on your home. How can you organize a space if you don't even know what style appeals to you? How do you decide what to keep when you can't tell the difference between what is truly yours and what was imposed on you? Your house becomes a museum dedicated to someone else's life. It's filled with objects you might hate, but which your ex once approved of. Your closet might still contain clothes that made you feel deeply uncomfortable, but which they insisted you wear. Everything around you is saturated with their tastes, their rules, and their lingering presence. You look at these items, feel no connection, yet you can't bring yourself to get rid of them because you have no idea what to replace them with. You lack a personal vision, you lack a concept for your space. The process of decluttering requires answers to core questions. What do I love? What truly matters to me? What kind of home do I want to create? But where those answers should be, there is only a gaping void. So, you leave everything exactly as it is. This physical chaos, a jumble of things belonging to him and things belonging to the old you, perfectly mirrors the confusion inside your own head. Before you can tackle the physical clutter, you must start sorting through the emotional clutter. You need to remember what you loved before the relationship, try new things, and search for what genuinely resonates with you. Only when you begin to rediscover your true identity will you find the strength and the desire to create a home that is a true reflection of you, not a monument to the person who tried to erase you. The 12th factor that completely freezes any attempt to clean or declutter is analysis paralysis. This is the state where you become so overwhelmed by information and choices that you are completely incapable of making any decision at all. And for someone dealing with trauma, someone already prone to excessive overthinking, that mountain of clutter becomes the perfect storm, fueling this paralysis. Let's look at a simple example. You pick up an old postcard. A typical person would look at it, smile, and either toss it into a memory box or simply discard it. For you, however, the most complicated mental process is immediately triggered. Who gave this to me? Oh right, Aunt Masha. When? New Year's 2005. What did she wish me? Happiness and health. How is Aunt Masha doing now? I should really call her. But if I call her, she'll ask how I am. And what am I going to tell her? That I'm sitting in the middle of a disaster zone sorting old greeting cards? That's embarrassing. Wait, maybe this postcard is the only thing I have left of Aunt Masha? No, there's that little vase. Where is the vase? I need to go find it now. Will Aunt Masha be offended if I throw this away? She won't know, but I will. It's a memory. But it's taking up space and I don't have any space left. Where should I put it? Should I get a separate box just for postcards? Where would I store that? Maybe I should just take a picture and then throw it away, but that's not the same. The energy is missing. And just like that, 10 minutes have passed. You are still standing there with that miserable postcard in your hands, completely drained by this internal monologue. Now multiply this by the thousands of items in your home. Every single item triggers an entire cascade of thoughts, memories, fears, and doubts. Your brain, already exhausted from dealing with trauma, simply cannot handle this level of demand. It overheats and crashes just like an old computer. And you, in complete powerlessness, simply put that postcard back into the general pile. Analysis paralysis isn't just about being indecisive. It is a severe defensive mechanism, the brain's response to informational overload, made worse by traumatic experiences that have taught you that any decision could be dangerous or lead to unpredictable consequences. The 13th factor that compounds the problem of clutter is a profound sense of shame and the intense drive towards self-isolation. For many, the mess in their home becomes a shameful, hidden secret. You start living a double life. At work or among your friends, you might be successful, put together, and perfectly organized. No one has any idea what's truly happening behind the closed doors of your apartment. This secret weighs on you like an unbearable burden. You live in panic, fear of uninvited guests. A simple buzzing sound from the intercom can trigger a full-blown panic attack. You lie to friends and relatives, coming up with elaborate excuses why they can't visit. I'm renovating, I'm sick, or my neighbors are fumigating for pests. Each lie reinforces that feeling of shame and loneliness. You find yourself trapped. You desperately need help and support, but you can't let anyone into your world because you fear judgment. You dread seeing disgust or pity in the eyes of your loved ones. You fear hearing the very words that are already echoing in your head, spoken in the abuser's voice. How could you let yourself go like this? Or, you're nothing but a slob. This paralyzing shame prevents you from reaching out for professional help, not just friends, but cleaning services or therapists. You feel like your problem is unique, horrifying, and that nobody else has ever dealt with anything like it. You hide your chaos, and along with it you hide your pain. This isolation only deepens the depression and anxiety, which in turn saps your strength to fight the disorder. What results is a vicious cycle. Clutter creates shame. Shame leads to isolation. Isolation intensifies the traumatic experiences, and those experiences steal your ability to clean. Breaking this cycle is incredibly difficult, and the first step is realizing that you are not alone. Thousands, even millions of survivors of abuse struggle with the exact same problem. Your clutter is not a moral failing. It is a symptom, just like a cough when you have a cold, and you should never be ashamed for being sick and needing help. Let's move on to the 14th aspect, the connection between clutter and compulsive buying, or what we often call shopaholism. For many trauma survivors, the act of buying new things becomes a form of self-medication. It's an attempt to fill that internal void, the one the abuser left behind. When you feel lonely, depressed, or anxious, heading to the store or browsing online offers temporary relief. The process of selecting, the purchase itself, the sheer anticipation of receiving something new. All of this triggers a massive hit of dopamine, the pleasure hormone. For a brief moment, you feel elevated. You feel more successful, more worthy. The new item feels like a promise of a fresh start. You might think, if I just buy this beautiful dress, my life will change. If I get this organizer, I'll finally get my space under control. If I purchase this self-help book, I'll transform into a better person. But this effect is incredibly short-lived. The euphoria of the purchase quickly dissolves into crushing disappointment. That beautiful dress hangs untouched in the closet because you have nowhere to wear it and no desire to go out. The organizer sits empty because you lack the energy to use it. The self-help book gathers dust because you can't focus long enough to read it. Meanwhile, your home fills up with more and more items that fail to solve the core problem. They only intensify it. It's like trying to quench a deep thirst by drinking salt water. The more you acquire, the more intense your feelings of dissatisfaction become. Furthermore, this kind of shopping is often entirely chaotic. You buy things you don't actually need, driven purely by momentary impulse. These aren't strategic purchases, they are emotional band-aids. As a result, your home fills up not just with old junk, but with new clutter, items that become disposable junk before they even serve their intended purpose. And the guilt you feel about the mess is compounded by the guilt over the money you wasted. This creates another vicious cycle where your attempt to solve the problem ultimately just fuels it further. Point 15 addresses a powerful metaphor. Physical clutter is a direct reflection of mental clutter. Our external world often mirrors our internal state, and if your mind is overwhelmed by the chaos resulting from trauma, it will inevitably manifest in the space around you. What exactly does mental clutter look like after narcissistic abuse? It's intrusive memories of traumatic events that invade your consciousness without warning. It's that constant internal dialogue with the abuser's critical voice. It's anxious thoughts about the future and bitter regrets about the past. It's 100 unfinished tasks and broken promises you made to yourself. It's profound emotional confusion. You might feel anger, sadness, love, and hatred for the same person all at once. Your brain is completely overloaded. It's trying to process the past, handle the present, and plan the future simultaneously, and it's failing. Now take a look at your home. That pile of unopened bills? Is that your anxiety about financial instability? That mountain of dirty dishes? And that's your fatigue and apathy. The broken item you keep meaning to fix. That's your shattered self-esteem. Those unpacked boxes you haven't touched since you moved in. That's the past you're terrified to confront. Every item out of place, every dusty surface, is a materialized negative thought or an unaddressed emotion. When you live in this kind of environment, it constantly feeds your internal state. You wake up, see the chaos all around you, and your first thought is, "I'm a failure, I can't even get this right." This external mess prevents your mind from resting. It constantly signals danger, incompleteness, and ongoing problems. This is exactly why one of the first pieces of advice psychologists give for depression is to tidy up just one small area, perhaps your nightstand. Creating a small island of order in the external world helps create a similar island of clarity in your mind. Conversely, until you start sorting through that mental clutter with therapy or self-help, fighting the physical mess will feel like a truly Sisyphean task. The 16th important point is differentiating between simple clutter and pathological hoarding. While they might look similar from the outside, they are two distinct conditions with fundamentally different psychological origins. Hoarding disorder, or pathological accumulation, is a recognized mental illness. Individuals with this condition feel an irresistible compulsion to collect and keep items, even if they are completely useless or unsanitary. Attempting to discard anything causes them immense stress and anxiety. Their homes often become completely impassable and dangerous to live in. Cluttering, however, especially when we discuss it in the context of trauma, is more of a behavioral symptom than a standalone disorder. A person dealing with severe clutter usually recognizes the problem. They don't enjoy the mess, they suffer because of it. They want a clean living space, but they lack the internal resources to achieve it, often for the reasons we've already discussed: exhaustion, fear, or paralyzing indecision. Unlike the true hoarder, who finds value in virtually every item, someone struggling with post-traumatic clutter often views their possessions with disgust, yet feels paralyzed and incapable of making any changes. However, the line between these two states can be very fine. Long-term, untreated clutter can worsen and start taking on the characteristics of hoarding. The emotional attachment to objects can intensify, and the inability to part with them can become chronic. Why is understanding this distinction so important? Because the approaches to solving the problem are vastly different. If the clutter is primarily caused by trauma, the main focus should be on psychotherapy, specifically addressing the consequences of emotional injury or abuse. But if it's full-blown hoarding, it requires a more comprehensive strategy, including cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, focused explicitly on behavioral correction, and sometimes even medication. Therefore, if you feel your situation is spinning out of control and your home is becoming unsafe, it is crucial to consult a professional for a proper diagnosis. The 17th reason, and perhaps one of the most insidious, is the echo of the abuser's voice inside your head when you try to clean or organize. For a healthy person, decluttering is usually a neutral, sometimes even satisfying activity. For you, it turns into a painful session of self-flagellation. The moment you pick up an item to decide its fate, the familiar tape starts playing in your mind. What are you going to do with that? You'll just mess it all up again anyway. You can't even handle this, you worthless failure. Why did you even buy this? Throwing money away again, you reckless spendthrift. Just look at what you've become. You're a pathetic sight. These phrases are not yours. They are direct quotes or the generalized messages of your tormentor, so deeply ingrained in your subconscious that you perceive them as your own internal thoughts. This internal critic undermines every single one of your efforts. Did you manage to clear one shelf? It instantly chimes in. Is that all you can do? Look how much work is left. You'll never finish this. Decided to finally throw out an item you don't need? It whispers, are you sure about that? What if you regret it? You always make the wrong decisions. The result is that instead of feeling the satisfaction of a job well done, you are left with only emptiness, shame, and despair. Every single action is accompanied by a torrent of negativity. Naturally, your psyche will avoid this process at all costs. It is easier to do nothing at all than to repeatedly dive into this corrosive bath of self-criticism and self-hatred. The fight against clutter remains impossible until you learn to recognize this foreign voice in your head, until you learn to respond to it clearly. That is not my thought. Those are their words, and they no longer have power over me. You need to become the kind, supportive parent to yourself, one who praises every single step, no matter how small. You did a great job clearing that shelf. That was not easy. I'm proud of you. Let's take a break now, and if you have the energy tomorrow, we'll do a little bit more. The 18th aspect deals with that pervasive, deep-seated feeling of being completely stuck, both physically and emotionally. The disorder in your home is the perfect metaphor for this mental state. The belongings that have piled up over the years symbolize a past you cling to, a past you simply can't let go of. Every old newspaper, every sealed box of useless items acts as an anchor, tethering you to that spot and actively preventing you from moving forward. You are literally living surrounded by your own history. You can't start a new life because you haven't physically cleared space for it to begin. How can anything new and good enter your life when every available surface is occupied by the old and obsolete? This feeling of stagnation permeates every area of your existence. You're stuck in a job you hate because you're terrified of change. You're trapped in isolation because you fear new relationships. You are locked in a cycle of traumatic memories, looping them endlessly in your mind, and your cluttered home is the physical embodiment of this trap. The pressure it exerts is not just emotional, it's profoundly physical. Living in a dense, obstructed space limits your movement and creates a tangible sense of suffocation. You can't breathe deeply, you can't even fully stretch out your shoulders. Energy doesn't circulate in this environment, it coagulates like stagnant marsh water. And your own vital life force becomes equally motionless. You feel heavy apathy, a total lack of motivation, and the constant awareness that life is simply passing you by. The way out of this paralyzing stagnation often starts small, with a single physical action. Tossing out one bag of trash, clearing one small box. This is far more than just household cleaning. It is a symbolic act, a profound declaration to the universe. I am ready to move forward. I am actively creating space for the new to enter. Even the smallest patch of clear space, a clean desktop or an empty windowsill, can become a source of fresh, vibrant energy, providing the initial momentum for transformation in the other, more significant areas of your life. Reason 19 is using objects as containers for unexpressed or unprocessed emotions. Narcissistic abuse often leaves an entire ocean of pain, anger, resentment, fear, and grief swimming inside you. However, expressing those intense emotions during the relationship was simply too dangerous. Every tear you shed or flicker of anger was used against you, invalidated, or triggered even greater aggression from the abuser. You learn to suppress your feelings, pushing them deep down. But emotions don't just vanish, they need an outlet. When they can't find a healthy way out, like crying, talking, or creativity, they start to cling to physical objects. This process happens entirely unconsciously. Maybe you bought a book during a period of intense sadness, and now that book symbolizes your suffering. You can't throw it out because that would feel like invalidating your own past pain. Or perhaps you have a pile of old clothes worn during the absolute worst period of the relationship. These clothes are literally charged with your fear and desperation. You never wear them, but you can't discard them either because they serve as tangible evidence of what you endured. Getting rid of these items feels like betraying the part of yourself that suffered so deeply. Your home essentially turns into a warehouse of preserved emotions. Sorting through this mess means cracking those emotional cans wide open. When you pick up an item associated with a specific traumatic period, the entire gamut of suppressed feelings comes flooding back. This rush can be unbearably painful, so you prefer to leave these items untouched, letting them sit there like emotional time bombs. To truly tackle this emotional clutter, you must first learn how to engage with your feelings. Acknowledge them, process them, and give them a healthy release. Psychotherapy, journaling, art therapy, and physical activity, all of these help release that trapped emotional energy. Only once that internal emotional container starts to empty will you finally find the strength and courage to deal with the external containers, the clutter itself. Point number 20 in our discussion explains why popular organizational methods like the KonMari method often fail or even cause harm to people dealing with trauma. Systems based on Marie Kondo's approach rely on the concept of keeping only those items that spark joy. This is a beautiful concept for someone who is psychologically healthy. But for a survivor of narcissistic abuse, it can quickly turn into a genuine torment. First, for someone dealing with trauma, depression, and anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure, very little actually sparks joy. You pick up an item, you check in with yourself, and you feel nothing, just emptiness. How can you possibly decide what to keep in that state? It only reinforces feelings of inadequacy. See, even my belongings don't make me happy. Something must be fundamentally wrong with me. Secondly, this method demands making a massive number of quick decisions. You're required to hold every single item, ask if it brings joy, and immediately decide. As we've discussed, for a traumatized brain, decision-making is an immense stressor that often leads to paralysis. The sheer scale of the task, sorting through an entire category of items all at once, like all your clothing, doesn't inspire, it triggers panic and the urge to just give up. Third, the advice to thank the item and let it go can be deeply triggering. For many abuse survivors, the very idea of letting go is strongly associated with pain, loss, and betrayal. They were forced to let go of their dreams, their boundaries, and their dignity. The demand to let go of physical objects, too, can feel like yet another act of violence. People with trauma need an entirely different approach, not a revolution, but a slow, gentle evolution, not all at once, but one manageable step at a time. Instead of asking, "Does this spark joy?" the question should be, "Is this item functionally useful to me? Does it align with the life I am trying to build? And does it cause me pain?" The approach must be trauma-informed, meaning it specifically accounts for how the psyche functions after experiencing abuse. The 21st reason we're discussing is the paradoxical need for control. When you were in a relationship with a narcissist, you were stripped of any control over your own life. They controlled your finances, your time, your social circle, even your emotions. You lived in a constant state of helplessness and unpredictability. Once you finally leave that relationship, there is a desperate, consuming need to reclaim that sense of control. This is where clutter and mess can play a cruel trick on you. On the surface, chaos seems like the ultimate loss of control. But for some people, it becomes the only domain where they feel they are the absolute sovereign. No one else gets to decide where a single item is placed. They think, "Yes, this is a mess, but this is my mess. I decide that this stack of magazines stays right here. I decide that this box can take up half the room." Any external attempt to intervene, for instance, a relative offering to help clean, can be perceived as a new intrusion on personal boundaries and a threat to this fragile, illusory sense of control. The person may fiercely defend their junk because it is the only thing that belongs to them completely And absolutely. Furthermore, the very act of acquisition or hoarding can provide a false sense of command over one's life. You can't control your emotions or your past, but you can go out and buy one more thing. The act of buying itself offers a temporary rush of power and dominance. I decide what to buy. I can afford this. The problem is that this form of control is destructive. It doesn't lead to a better life, it only deepens the surrounding chaos. Real control is the ability to make decisions that lead to genuine order, harmony, and well-being. But to achieve that, you must first heal the part of yourself that feels utterly helpless. You need to start believing that you are capable of controlling your life in constructive ways, managing your time, your finances, and your emotional reactions. Only then will the need to cling to the destructive control of clutter finally fall away. The 22nd key aspect is the direct link between financial abuse and compulsive cluttering. Financial abuse is one of the most common forms of control in narcissistic relationships. The abuser might completely cut off your access to funds, micromanage every single penny you spend, or actively force you into debt. This results in a deeply distorted relationship with both money and possessions. You live in a constant state of fear of poverty, fear of need. And this fear doesn't disappear when the relationship ends, it stays with you for years. How does this trauma manifest in clutter? First, you have a panicked fear of throwing out anything that might have potential value. Old but still functional gadgets, clothes with a small defect that could be repaired, jars, boxes, random bits of string, anything that might come in handy someday. Your brain, terrified by the trauma of scarcity, screams, "Don't throw it away!" What if we don't have money again and this thing saves us? Your home effectively becomes a storage unit for a rainy day, which in your mind could arrive at any moment. Second, you often feel irrational guilt about getting rid of anything you paid for, even if it cost just pennies. It feels as though you are throwing away cash itself. This burden is especially heavy if the abuser constantly shamed you or criticized your spending habits. Third, following a long period of total scarcity, you might swing to the opposite extreme, compulsive purchasing of cheap items. You buy everything on clearance racks and in dollar stores because it gives you the illusion of wealth and freedom. I can afford this now. But these cheap, low-quality items quickly break, lose their appeal, and only add to the mountains of clutter in your home. To overcome this, you need to actively work on dismantling your scarcity mindset. You must prioritize financial literacy, build a proper safety net, but most importantly, convince yourself that you are capable of earning money and that you are no longer a helpless victim. Your peace of mind and the physical space in your home are worth far more than that old item you're afraid to let go of. Point 23 focuses on the specific impact clutter has on your social life and forming new relationships. We've previously discussed how messiness often leads to self-isolation from friends and family. But what happens when you decide to push past those fears and actively try to build new, healthy connections? Household clutter becomes a massive roadblock. In the early stages of dating, it's completely natural to want to invite a new partner over. But for someone dealing with clutter, that thought immediately triggers panic. You simply can't do it. This forces you into constantly lying, making excuses, or limiting your interactions solely to neutral territory or your partner's home. This inevitably creates tension and breeds suspicion. Your partner might start to wonder if you're hiding something serious, or perhaps if you aren't serious about the relationship itself. And if you finally bite the bullet and invite them over, the reality of your living situation can become a severe test for the relationship. Even the most understanding partner might be genuinely shocked. They may struggle to understand that this isn't just laziness, it's often a symptom of trauma. They might try to help, but you could perceive their attempts as criticism or boundary infringement, immediately leading to conflict. Furthermore, your clutter can easily become a major red flag for a new partner. They might become overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the issue and decide they aren't prepared for that kind of complexity. This outcome then serves as yet another painful confirmation of your own perceived worthlessness, delivering a fresh blow to your self-esteem. Living in clutter literally leaves no space for another person in your life, both physically and metaphorically. You can't comfortably share a couch piled high with stuff. A cluttered bedroom suffocates intimacy. Chaos repels, it builds barriers. Therefore, if your goal is to build new, healthy relationships, working on your physical space isn't just about aesthetics. It becomes a fundamental measure of your readiness to let another person into your life. It is an essential step in your process of healing and opening yourself up to the world. Point number 24 is the critical starting point. How do you take that initial step when the task feels absolutely insurmountable? The secret is to ditch the idea of a massive, overwhelming deep clean and switch to a strategy of micro steps. Your overwhelmed brain cannot cope with the monumental task of cleaning the entire apartment. It instantly triggers panic and that common freeze response. That's why you need to break the job down into the smallest, simplest, and least threatening actions possible. Forget about cleaning the entire room. Your goal for today is to clear just one surface. For example, clear the kitchen table, or maybe the bedside nightstand, or even just a single chair. Even better, set a timer for 5 or 10 minutes. Tell yourself, I'm only going to clean for 5 minutes, and then I am stopping, full stop, no matter what. Anyone can handle 5 minutes. During that time, you might only manage to toss a couple of wrappers or wipe dust off a small corner, but that is a massive victory. What matters isn't how much you got done, but that you actually started. You broke through the paralysis. You proved to your brain that this action is not dangerous. After every single micro step, make sure you praise yourself. Don't minimize it by saying, it was only 5 minutes. No, genuinely praise yourself. I did great. I managed to start, and that was crucial. You can also use what is known as the one-bag method. Grab a trash bag and simply walk through your home, collecting obvious garbage, old receipts, empty packaging, dried-out wipes. No major decisions, just pick up anything that is 100% guaranteed trash. This is another extremely simple and effective action. The goal of these micro steps isn't to achieve perfection in one afternoon. The goal is to gradually teach your nervous system that cleaning isn't something to fear. We want to create a new neural pathway. Tidying up equals a small win equals I'm capable. Slowly but surely, step by step, you'll begin to reclaim your space and your faith in yourself. The 25th and arguably the most vital element on your path to recovery is self-compassion. The voice of the abuser in your head is the voice of cruelty, criticism, and judgment. To defeat it, you must actively introduce an opposing voice, the voice of kindness, understanding, and self-compassion. Every time you catch yourself thinking, I am a lazy slob, stop and consciously replace that thought. Reframe it. I'm having a genuinely hard time right now. My clutter or disorder is a symptom of trauma, not a moral failing. I deserve empathy, not condemnation. This isn't about excusing inaction. It is about fundamentally changing your internal motivation. You tidy up not because you are bad and need to fix yourself. You clean because you are a worthy person who has been through hell, and you deserve to live in a beautiful, comfortable, and safe space. You are doing this for yourself, out of love and self-care. Self-compassion also means forgiving yourself for relapses and setbacks. There will be days when you don't even have the energy for a 5-minute tidy-up. On those days, it is crucial not to scold yourself, but to offer support. Say to yourself, I have depleted resources today. That is okay. I will rest now and I can try again tomorrow. Imagine that you are caring not for yourself, but for your best friend who has been through exactly what you have. Would you scold them for the mess? Or would you give them a hug, make them a cup of tea, and assure them that they will get through this? Become that friend for yourself. Practicing self-compassion is not selfishness or weakness. It is the single most powerful tool for trauma recovery. It literally changes your brain chemistry, lowers your stress levels, and activates the centers responsible for feelings of safety and nurturing. And once you begin treating yourself with genuine kindness, you will be surprised to find that the desire to care for your physical space appears automatically and naturally as a direct extension of caring for yourself. Step number 26 involves a crucial mindset shift, reframing cleanup as an act of self-care rather than a miserable obligation. In our minds, the word cleaning often carries heavy negative baggage, back-breaking work, overwhelming mess, obligation, or even punishment. For survivors of abuse, this feeling is compounded because the narcissist often weaponized cleaning as a tool for control and degradation. They might have forced you to re-clean an already spotless floor, nitpicked the quality of your work, or deliberately created messes just to ensure you were cleaning constantly. Consequently, cleaning became a symbol of servitude and powerlessness. To break this association, you need to consciously redefine what the word means to you. Try swapping out cleaning for phrases like caring for my space, creating comfort, or a ritual of purification. Shift the focus from the process, the scrubbing, the dusting, to the desired outcome, beauty, comfort, and security. Realize that when you clean your home, you are not serving a sentence. You are building yourself a sanctuary, a place where you can restore your energy, where you feel safe and completely at peace. Every item you toss out isn't just one less thing to deal with, it's a breath of fresh air you gain back. Every clean surface isn't just the absence of dust, it's your declaration to the world. I am in control of my life and my environment. Try turning this process into a truly enjoyable ritual. Put on your favorite music, light an aromatic candle or some incense, wear comfortable, perhaps even beautiful clothing. Work at your own pace, taking breaks for a pleasant cup of tea. Reward yourself for every small win. The goal is to shatter that old traumatic association, cleaning equals suffering, and forge a new one. Caring for your home equals self-care equals pleasure. This is a long-term process that won't happen overnight. However, every single time you approach cleaning with this new attitude, you are strengthening that new, healthy neural pathway. The 27th strategy for tackling that feeling of global chaos is creating safe zones, or islands of order. The idea is this: instead of trying to boil the ocean and clean the entire house at once, you pick one small, very specific area and bring it to a state of absolute perfection. Then you maintain that order at all costs. This could be your favorite reading chair, your nightstand, a windowsill filled with plants, a small coffee table. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's visible and you associate it with relaxation and peace. When you create such an island, several important things happen. First, you get a fast, visible result. This provides a powerful dopamine hit and a sense of satisfaction. I did it! Here's the proof. This is a crucial micro-win. Second, this island serves as your visual anchor. Amidst the overall chaos, you have a place you can look at and feel immediate relief. It reminds you what your home can look like and what you're working toward. It offers hope and motivation. Third, maintaining order in a tiny space is far easier than trying to manage the whole apartment. This builds the habit of tidiness and trains the skill of maintenance. Every day, wiping the dust off your safe nightstand reinforces your self-belief. Once maintaining this small island feels easy and natural, you can expand it. Add the clean floor space around the nightstand, then the dresser. Little by little, island by island, you reclaim your space from the chaos. This method lowers anxiety, makes the task achievable, and provides continuous positive reinforcement. It's not storming the castle, it's a slow, confident siege that will inevitably lead to victory. Point 28 is about understanding exactly when it's necessary to seek professional assistance. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, self-help efforts simply aren't enough. The trauma may be too deep or the cluttering problem too severe and chronic to tackle entirely on your own. And there is absolutely no shame in that. Admitting you need help isn't a sign of weakness, it is a profound act of strength and wisdom. What kind of help are we talking about? First, the primary resource is a psychotherapist specializing in trauma work. ideally someone experienced in the aftermath of narcissistic abuse. A therapist can help you uncover the root causes of your current situation. They will guide you through processing traumatic memories, healing your inner child, learning self-compassion, and establishing healthy boundaries. Dealing with the physical clutter will become significantly easier once you start healing the core issue. Second, consider seeking help from a psychiatrist. If you are experiencing symptoms of severe depression, an anxiety disorder, or CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, a doctor may prescribe medication. This treatment can stabilize your mood and provide the necessary energy for you to take the crucial next steps. Third, there is the specialized role of the trauma-informed professional organizer. This person is far more than someone who just physically helps you declutter. They are specialists who understand the deep psychological aspects of chronic clutter. They work gently, at your pace, and completely without judgment. They will help you not only establish order, but also create a customized storage system that truly works for you, and teach you the skills needed for long-term maintenance. Seeking this kind of help is a crucial investment in yourself and your future. You don't have to go through this alone. There are professionals ready and equipped to help you, and taking that step toward them can be the turning point on your journey to healing. The 29th crucial reason to understand is the disruption of the brain's executive functions, a direct consequence of trauma. Executive functions are a set of higher mental processes that allow us to plan, organize, initiate, and complete tasks, manage our time, and focus our attention. They are essentially the CEO of our brain. Prolonged stress and trauma literally damage the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for these functions. As a result, executive functions can be severely compromised in a trauma survivor. How does this manifest in the context of cleaning? You find it hard to create an action plan. You look at the room and have no idea where to start. Everything seems equally important and urgent. It's difficult to break down a big task, like cleaning, into small subtasks. You can't establish a sequence, first gathering trash, then sorting items, then dusting. You struggle to initiate action. You might plan everything perfectly, but the actual transition from thought to action feels like an insurmountable barrier. Maintaining focus is hard. You might start tidying a closet, but 5 minutes later, you get distracted by a phone call, then an interesting article online, and eventually forget where you even started. It's challenging to follow through and finish the job. You start with enthusiasm, but quickly burn out and quit halfway, often leaving behind an even bigger mess. Understanding that this isn't due to laziness or disorganization, but rather a genuine neurobiological consequence of trauma is incredibly important. This lifts a huge burden of guilt. It also helps you find the right self-help tools, creating extremely detailed written plans, using timers like the Pomodoro technique, focusing on only one task at a time, and setting up external cues and reminders. Essentially, you need to become an external CEO for your own brain, providing it with clear, simple, step-by-step instructions. And finally, the 30th and final point is the joyful and deeply inspiring process of reclaiming your aesthetic, or, simply put, getting your style back. When you lived with a narcissist, your space was a reflection of his tastes, his rules, his ego. Once you start clearing away the clutter of the past, a clean slate opens up before you. And this is your chance to finally create a home that is 100% yours. This process isn't just about decorating. It is a powerful therapeutic practice for recovering your identity. What do you truly like? What colors soothe you and which ones energize you? What textures feel good to you? Smooth wood, soft velvet, rough linen? What scents do you love? You can start by creating a mood board on Pinterest, collecting images of interiors that truly speak to you. Don't overthink it. Just save whatever catches your eye. Eventually, you'll start seeing patterns and understanding your personal style. Maybe it's Scandinavian minimalism, cozy boho, or vibrant maximalism. It doesn't matter what it is as long as it's truly yours. You no longer have to ask anyone for permission. You can paint a wall crazy pink. You can hang up your own drawings or photographs. You can buy that silly chair he would have laughed at. Every single item you bring into your revitalized home must be chosen by you with love and intentionality. This process gives you back the sense of authorship over your life. You are no longer a character in someone else's play. You are the director, the screenwriter, and the protagonist of your own story, and your home becomes the stage where this new, happy chapter unfolds. It's no longer just an apartment. It is your place of power, your fortress, your true reflection. And that is truly what makes the challenging journey of decluttering worthwhile. So, let's summarize what we've covered. Today, we delved into 30 complex and interconnected reasons why your home might have become a storage unit for pain, fear, and exhaustion. The most crucial thing I want you to take away from this entire video is this: your clutter is not your fault. It is not a sign of laziness, disorganization, or some kind of moral failing. It is an absolutely normal, predictable, and explainable response from your psyche to the abnormal, sometimes inhumane, conditions you have been navigating. It is a symptom of trauma, much like a physical scar left after an injury. And like any scar, it requires gentle, compassionate, and patient healing. Stop beating yourself up about it. Instead, look at your home with empathy. It is your ally. It has shown you just how deep your wounds run, and now it is ready to become your greatest aid in the process of recovery. Every box you sort, every bag of trash you dispose of, that's not just cleaning. That is an act of liberation. It is a step toward your true self. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this long and perhaps challenging video. If you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to explore these complex topics together. Now, I have a question for you. Which of the 30 reasons we discussed resonated most deeply with you? Please share your thoughts in the comments if you feel comfortable doing so. Your experience is incredibly valuable and can help others who are sitting in the middle of their chaos right now, believing they are completely alone. Let's support each other. Remember, you can do this step by step.